Today we're going to find out whether or not it's still worth buying a GH5 in 2020. Let's get into it. Howdy folks, my name's Shane. I'm a video content creator and producer from Melbourne, Australia. I've been producing videos with the GH5 for several years now through many of the firmware updates. This review will cover everything you'll need to know about the GH5 from a user perspective. If you want technical specifications only, this video won't be for you. This will be a hands-on review, and we're going to see whether or not it's still worth buying a GH5 in 2020. The GH5 was released in March of 2017 and has become an industry standard for online content creators and video professionals. While the camera now is over 3 years old or thereabouts, as of shooting this video, it's still capable of things that newer cameras just can't do. It might seem a little crazy buying an older camera in 2020 when there's so many newer ones out there, but this has been delivering the goods year after year, and I really love the results. The GH5 is not only perfect for the online content creator, it's also a very solid camera for professional projects. Over the last year, I've produced almost 1,000 videos with my GH5. If you go to my In the Blues channel or a couple of my other channels, you can see, no kidding, I've done at least 1,000 videos with that one right there. This one's probably up to about 100. I've also used my GH5s outside of YouTube to produce web commercials for local businesses, as well as training videos for Australia's top bodybuilder. After shooting so many projects with the GH5, it still astounds me just how great the results are. Even in 2020, it still has that micro four thirds sensor, but don't hold that against it. In my opinion, the GH5's positives far outweigh the negatives, and I still believe it's worth buying in 2020. And here's why. So the first thing I have to talk about is form factor and build quality. In the hand, this feels like an absolute beast. In regards to the smaller mirrorless cameras I've tested, the GH5 is by far my favorite. It's made out of a magnesium alloy body, which makes it not only weather sealed, but also really rugged. The SD card slots and battery slots are easily accessed, making a quick battery change a breeze. You can even change the battery while it's on a tripod, which is something my old Panasonic G7 was unable to do on the tripods that I own. Now that might not be the case for everybody, but this is positioned in a much easier spot where you can just simply pop the battery or the SD card slot open on the side and you're good to go. It's much easier than my old Panasonic G7. The buttons and dials all feel like high quality components that offer just the right amount of tension. The GH5 joystick on the back is by far one of the best ones I've tried personally. It's responsive and you'll never accidentally move it unless you want to, even with your thumb on it. On my next trip overseas, which was actually scheduled for this May, but I can't see myself traveling now for the rest of the year at least, I'm going to be taking 2 of my GH5s and a couple of small prime lenses, and I'll be done and the results will look amazing. I really believe for the small compact professional rig, it's pretty hard to beat a GH5, even given some of its drawbacks, which we'll get to. Let's talk a little bit now about the image quality that you get out of the Panasonic GH5. The 4K video quality straight out of camera is stunning. I'm still blown away by the results I get from this somewhat old camera. The picture quality is sharp and very detailed. I edit all of my footage on a 5K iMac, and seeing the full resolution on a 4 or 5K screen looks very impressive even to today's standards. For the best picture quality from my lens selection, I love the Panasonic Leica 15mm f1.7 and the trusty old inexpensive 25mm f1.7, which I'm using on both of these side cameras right now. I highly recommend you choose a prime lens for video on a micro four thirds camera. This will allow more light to come in and getting more of that Tony style background blur. One of the really cool things about the GH5 is in comparison to a lot of other larger sensor cameras, it doesn't have a whole lot of rolling shutter. Now rolling shutter is when you turn the camera left to right really quickly, and because the sensor reads top to bottom, you get what looks like to be wavy lines coming down. It kind of makes you feel a little bit seasick. The GH5 is still one of the best when it comes to rolling shutter or lack thereof. Now, if you want to get super technical with your video footage, you can, of course, install the Vlog update to the computer. It's around $99, or depending on where you live, of course. It will vary, but I don't use it. I use Cine D and Cine V. Cine V is a straight out of camera profile that you're no doubt looking at on all 3 of these cameras right now. I'm using a GH5 on this one and 2 Panasonic G85s, and between all of these cameras, the straight out of camera image looks really, really nice. One of the things that's important to me as a content creator is trying to work as efficiently as possible. I don't want to have to then grade Vlog footage. I'd rather just get a good or great picture quality straight out of camera that I can throw in the computer and just adjust the lighting and contrast or levels or anything like that just a little bit. But overall, I try to expose the camera right the first time so I don't have to mess with it a whole lot later. One of the things that's still unmatched about the GH5 in many ways is its unlimited recording time. Even though we're in 2020, I find it amusing that most of the camera brands are still unable to shoot until your SD card fills up. They either have recording limits or they chop your files every 4 gigabytes, which I totally hate. One of the great things about the Panasonic GH5 is if I'm shooting a video like this and it takes me 40 minutes to get it right, I get 3 files. One from this camera, one from this camera, and one from that camera. It means file management is so much easier. I'd rather get one big file than have it split all of the time. And if I don't realize I'm shooting past a 30-minute interval or timer, a lot of cameras still chop the video at 30 minutes, and it's so frustrating to see that. I've never had either the Panasonic GH5 or these G85s ever overheat in the conditions that I've been using them in. So yeah, I think unlimited recording time is an absolute no-brainer. You can do this in 10-bit, 25 or 30p, 4K 60 or 50 depending on where you live, 24p, it's got all of those options there. Unlimited recording time and unlimited recording capacity is awesome. I think it does split the file around every 96 gigabytes, which I'm yet to get up to that for one continuous shoot. But if you want to let it run for 4 hours, go for it. The sad reality is not many cameras out there will offer unlimited recording without cutting the file or without the camera overheating. It's 2020, there should be way more cameras doing what the GH5 does, but there's simply not. Now, if you know anything about the GH5, odds are you know that it's got legendary in-body image stabilization, or IBIS for short. The only other camera I've seen with a comparable stabilizer is the Panasonic S1H, and that's almost 3 times the price. Paired with a Panasonic lens that has optical stabilization, you can achieve a level of stabilization that's hard to match with any other camera system on the market, with the exception of the other Panasonic cameras, which are way more expensive, but still great. IS lock works wonders for stationary shots. If you're doing any handheld work and you want to hold the camera in one spot, the results are tripod-like stabilization. I've used this for shooting my friend at the gym, and it just looks fantastic. It really just locks the shot in and takes out any tremors or any shakes you may have in your hand. It works an absolute treat. Definitely turn it on. If you've got a GH5, you never turn on IS lock, look up how to do it and give it a shot. It's amazing. Just a quick pro tip, I actually have IS lock assigned to a function key on the back of the camera so I can turn it on and off without having to worry. It's just nice and simple. One click it turns on, one click it turns off. Now you might be asking, why do you want it off? So if you're panning, it looks better with it off, but if you just want a stationary shot, turn it on, one button click, nothing weird happens with the video footage, it just works extremely well. Let's talk a little bit about lens selection and the ecosystem. While Panasonic have a huge selection of native lenses available, you also have a wider ecosystem at your disposal. This means you can literally choose from any micro four third lenses from Panasonic, Sigma, Olympus, Samyang, Mitacon, and many more. So if price is a consideration, you'll be able to find something that will get you started, or it will even come with a kit lens that will do the job. My personal favorite lenses are the Panasonic Leica 15mm f1.7, the 25mm f1.7, and the 12-60 kit lens. 12-60 kit lens has great image stabilization built into the lens, and that's why I think it's one of the best, most unsung heroes of that whole lens selection lineup. It's something that I used on my channel for years. In my opinion though, the prime lenses will get you the best results. Let's talk about the physical size and layout of this camera. I think this feels great for a small camera. Nothing on the back ever feels cramped or anything like that. And it's a really easy camera to use for muscle memory. Once you know where your options are, you'll learn it extremely quickly. And I hardly even have to look at this. Even if it's facing behind me, I know exactly what buttons I'm pressing just based on what's around it. They've got just enough options on the back to assign any number of functions to any buttons without it being too complicated or complex for most users. So for someone who is coming to the GH5, you'll learn this really well, and your muscle memory will know exactly what buttons you're pressing, and they've put them in a very intuitive position, which I really love. Now, in terms of the battery life on the GH5 is pretty much unrivaled. You can get a few good hours of video recording time in 4K 25p or 4K 30. I've noticed that the battery life is reduced slightly when shooting in 4K 60, but it's not a huge deal. With the addition of the first-party battery grip from Panasonic or a third-party one like I use, I'll leave some links below, you can make 2 batteries last all day. If you plan on using the GH5 for a YouTube channel, for example, where you're going to be using it for long periods of time, there's plenty of AC dummy batteries out there as well. I'll leave some links below if I can find the exact one that I've purchased. Let's talk a little bit about audio quality. Audio quality to me is foremost. You know, it's great to have great picture quality, but if your audio sucks, no one's going to sit there and listen to the video. So one of the great things about the built-in preamps, if you take this off and you plug straight into it, and you're listening to that right now through my Rode Link wireless pack, is they're extremely good. The built-in preamps will definitely do the job. If you want to step it up, you can get one of these. This is the DMW 2-channel input audio mixer from Panasonic. I actually got one of these free with the camera as a special offer. This will allow you to plug in something like a Rode Shotgun microphone or any brand of condenser microphone and record directly to the camera and get really great results. Now, there's a few things to learn about the actual audio mixer or audio attachment adapter for the GH5, but once you work it out, you turn auto gain off and just basically turn down the volume to a safe spot, you're gonna get really great results. I've used this to record direct podcasts too, it's that good. So yeah, it can handle microphones of all different types. If you're looking for a great audio solution for your production, I can highly recommend getting this. And if you do upgrade at some point to something like an S1H, this is still compatible, so I can just hot swap it onto the new camera. Pretty cool. Let's talk a little bit now about getting that background blur, or what they now refer to as the toner instead of bokeh, because Tony Northrup, man, he's the king of the background blur. You can't see anything that's going on behind him. It's awesome. I hope he keeps trolling everybody. I love it. Getting the background blur is quite easy to achieve with the right lens. With that in mind, it will still be easier with a full frame camera. When I shoot with either my 25mm or 15mm f1.7, there's enough background blur to satisfy me. I don't want to go too, Tony Northrup, just kidding, man. I love your videos, by the way. But yeah, if you don't want to go too over the top, this will definitely still give you enough without getting too crazy. So in terms of the background blur, I have no problems with this. And the closer you are to something as well when you're trying to shoot it, the more of the background blur you're going to get. Lens selection is the key. You won't get as much with, say, one of the kit lenses, which I've got back here, but getting something like a 1.7 will definitely do the job. Let's talk a little bit about some additional things I love about the GH5. So if you're a content creator, there's nothing worse than realizing you had the camera on manual focus and you were out of focus only to reshoot the video again. This has a full-size HDMI out, which I use with a massive reference monitor. I don't buy those little ones that you can get for cameras and put on top. I don't see the point in that. I use a 31.5-inch screen in my main production room, and I can see instantly if I'm in focus. I just think having a full-size HDMI connector is so much better than those little mini or micro ones. Not that there's anything wrong with those micro ones, they still work, but one of the great things about this, the connection's nice and secure, it's easy to get it in and out, and what can I tell you, it just works a treat. While I touched on this early, one of the best features about this camera is the fact that you can assign so many function buttons to custom mode presets. This really allows you to use the camera how you want to use it, as opposed to how the company or Panasonic should say how you should use it. Now, a lot of camera companies out there don't give you that extreme flexibility when it comes to custom presets and function buttons. I also love the fact that the custom mode dial at the top allows you to set several custom video settings at the turn of a button. You can literally save each of the presets how you want and change the mode dial accordingly as you need them. For the GH5, I have a 4K 25p, 4K 50p, 1080p at a higher frame rate, so I can get that slow motion just by clicking the control at the top of the camera, and then I'm good to go. Now, setting those can be a little bit fiddly if you haven't done it before, but having 3 different modes just by clicking the button across at the top or turning it makes life a whole lot easier in the heat of the moment. If you want to get a slow-mo shot, you don't have to dive through menus. You can go to your next preset and hit record, and you're good to go. One thing you can't do though is be recording while you turn it. It will pause the camera. So just be aware of that. If you do change modes, just start recording again, you're good to go. Without question, the number one thing that people complain about when it comes to the GH5 is the autofocus. Now, I've been using it the entire video. I've got a little box right here on my face. I did a tutorial video about this. If you want to find out about that, links will be in, I'll put one up in the card somewhere up here, and you can check that video out. So one of the interesting things about the autofocus is generally it works pretty well, but it's very lens dependent. Now, I'm using a lens which I don't feel is the best for autofocus, and that's the 15mm f1.7. It's not bad, but it's nowhere near as good as, say, the 12-60 kit lens or even the Panasonic 25mm f1.7. It's just not as reliable, but I'm going to test this out right now and show you that over the different firmware incarnations, it's gotten much, much better. So it's focused back on my face. I'm just checking the flippy screen, which is another great thing about this. We're going to see if it will focus. Yep, looks like it's working. and it goes back to me. Now, this one area mode is by far the most reliable. I've tried them all, and after all of my testing, this is by far the best mode. Links will be up here if you want to check out that video. I guess the long story short with the autofocus is that it's improved, but it will never be as good as Sony or even Canon at this stage. This depth from defocus system that they've got and they've stood by, this contrast-based detection one, just isn't as good. But all the positives of the camera far outweigh the negatives, and it has improved. And what can I tell you? I use a mix. I use a mix of autofocus and manual focus depending on what I'm shooting at any one time. But I thought for the sake of this video, we'll leave it on autofocus and see how it goes. Let's talk a little bit about the color science in these cameras, and this is something that's totally subjective. There is a green color tint, and you will either like it or you won't. Me personally, I didn't like it that much. So what I've done in camera, one of the great things about it is when you adjust the white balance, you can simply pull the green out and move it down towards the magenta. I'll leave an image on screen of how I've got that set, and it removes that green tint, making it probably look a little bit more like the GH5S, which has more of that red look to it over the green look. Now, I don't really like the green look. So many people out there love it, but I think it does some weird things to the skin tones, but it's an easy adjustment in camera, and it really saves me doing it in post. I don't ever change up the color that much in post anymore. The straight out of camera image is what you'll see on this video. On the most part, I'll probably adjust the level slightly as I've lost some sunlight, but overall, straight out of camera, you can get some great results, but the green tint definitely isn't for everybody. There's no high pass filter in the camera, which means you can get moiré in your shot, and it can be a huge problem, as you've seen on some of the other shirts I've worn on this channel over the last 12 months or so. If you lower the sharpening in camera, it's not that much of a problem, but I like to leave it just wide open. I don't think it's that big of a problem. Just pick the right shirt. I haven't worn those for a while now because everyone complained. One of the small downsides of the GH5 is its low light capability when compared with full frame cameras. Now, with this in mind, it has never really posed a problem for me at home with studio lights or out and about with natural light for regular shooting. Now, depending on which lens you use, you'll get different results. So if you're using something that's 3.5 to say 5.6 in terms of its f-stop, you're gonna get very different results, something that's just 1.7. So if you're gonna be shooting in low light conditions, definitely get a lens that favors that condition. Will it then be as good as the full frame counterpart? Probably not. Now, depending on which lens you choose will also vastly change how much noise you get in the image, even shooting indoors. So I always recommend getting something like the Panasonic Leica f1.7 if you can afford that, the 15mm one, or get the 25mm f1.7. It will give you far less noise in the image than say the kit lens I was talking about before, the 12 to 60, 3.5 to 5.6. So with all that in mind, can I recommend the GH5 in 2020, or should you go for something different? I can absolutely recommend it, but I would also recommend getting a couple of prime lenses for your bag as well as the camera, as the results will just look simply fantastic. Now, a zoom lens, there's nothing wrong with a zoom lens, but if you're going to be doing a YouTube channel, for example, I highly recommend getting a prime lens. You can work with different lighting conditions and the flexibility will be that much better. Now, if you're going to be shooting in low light only, maybe opt for something with a larger sensor, whether it's Sony or Panasonic, but you are going to sacrifice a few of the trade-offs, whether it's size or weight versus something like this. And these have dropped so far in price over the last 12 months as well, probably because there's going to be a new camera coming out pretty soon, that I really think they're an absolute deal. Just to let you know too, I purchased all the camera equipment you've seen on my channel. I didn't get any special deals from Panasonic or any retailer. If you find the video helpful and you did enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up. If you are looking for a GH5, I'll leave some links through to B&H Photo in the description below that help support the channel at no extra cost to you. Thanks again for watching. Catch you soon. See ya.